Hey everybody, it's Melissa with Beauty by Nature, and in this video I'm going to teach you guys how to make a Payday candy bar. The recipe I use makes a pretty big sized Payday candy bar, and I use all natural sweeteners. I'm just going to be using honey and pure maple syrup, and I also use brown rice syrup, but you can just use honey and pure maple syrup as well. And we're also making it dairy-free and gluten-free, so I hope you guys enjoy this tutorial on how to make a giant Payday candy bar. Alright, for this recipe we're going to be using honey, full-fat coconut milk, almond milk, pure maple syrup, and then you can use brown rice syrup, or you can just use more pure maple syrup. Then you're going to need about 12 ounces of peanuts and a pretty good sized pot because it makes a lot of candy bar. So we're going to start off by adding all of our ingredients to our pot. So I've already got 1.5 cups of honey in there. The next thing we're going to add is the brown rice syrup, and we use 1/2 cup of that. We use 1/2 cup of pure maple syrup. Scrape that a little bit. So far we have 1.5 cups of honey and 1/2 cup of brown rice syrup and 1/2 cup of pure maple syrup. If you don't have brown rice syrup, you can just do 1 cup of maple syrup. We're going to add to this 1/2 cup of almond milk. And this is just unsweetened original almond milk. All right, with the full fat coconut milk, you'll want to have kept it in the fridge overnight before you use it, because then it separates the cream onto the top. This is just a replacement for regular dairy cream, so you could technically just use 1 cup of dairy cream instead. And I don't measure this. I just scrape that thick pasty stuff off of the top like that, and you'll see that it has separated in the fridge. You can just see down in there that there's a liquid. You don't want really a lot of the liquid. It's not going to hurt, it'll get a little bit, but just scrape most of that pasty stuff off, and that goes in as our cream. So add that. Coconut cream is pretty cool because it can replace things for dairy. For dairy cream, you can whip it and use it as whipped cream. And I use it in the place of regular cream all the time. All right, after that, you've got the honey, the coconut cream, the almond milk, and the other 2 sweeteners, the pure maple syrup and the brown rice syrup. We're just going to turn this on the oven, stovetop, and let it start heating. As it starts to heat, mix it just a little bit with a whisk. It needs to heat up just a little bit. Soften the sugar and the honey and the cream. But you'll mix this, and then we're going to watch it over the next about 45 minutes. It takes about 45 minutes to bring it up to temperature. It has to get up to about 240 or softball stage. And I'll continue to monitor that throughout this process. So we'll just come back to it in a few minutes once it's kind of gotten soft, and we'll follow it along as we heat it up. All right, the trick to this recipe is because it makes so much caramel. Once it gets to softball stage, hardball stage, right in the 240 degrees, you have to cool it off really quickly. I use this bread pan. You could use any pan that's got good sized sides, you could use just a 9 by 13 inch pan and dump it into there. But you're definitely going to want to have a sink full of cold ice water ready. So you'll just take this, fill it full of ice cold water, add a little bit of ice to it, and have it just deep enough that obviously it's not going to get into the pan when you place it in there, but it will surround that candy bar in the bottom of this pan so that it starts to immediately cool it off so it doesn't continue to cook itself. So while you're heating up your candy bar, you can get your pan ready and your water ready. The other thing that I do is I line my pan, whatever pan I'm using, with parchment paper because it's going to not stick to that candy bar, so that helps a lot. So just line your pan with parchment paper and then get your sink full of cold water, and then we'll go back and check on our candy bar. Okay, as you can see, all of the coconut cream has dissolved, the honey has dissolved, everything is just this beautiful caramel colored liquid. Right now I have it on high. I'm just going to kind of watch. As you can see, it's starting to really bubble up. So you wouldn't want to keep it on high. That would be a little bit too much. Probably more like medium heat. As it starts to boil, turn it down just a little bit so that you don't overflow it. And then just let this boil for probably a good 20 or 30 minutes on low to medium heat. See, I've turned it down just a little bit. You don't want it to overflow. Low to medium heat. And then for about 20 minutes, stirring it occasionally. And then we will start to kind of watch to test to see if it's coming close. It takes a while. I don't use a candy thermometer. I just use a cup and a spoon. I put really cold water into the cup, spoon a little bit of the liquid out, and then pour it in, and then test it with my fingers. And that's going to tell you what consistency it's at a cool temperature. So we'll go ahead and just let this boil for about 20 minutes, and we'll come back and check on it, stirring it occasionally. The other thing you're going to want to have ready, make sure your peanuts are open and ready close at hand, because as soon as this reaches temperature, we're going to want to add them. Also make sure that you have a big spoon and a spatula to scrape the caramel out. So we'll just come back and check it in about 20 minutes. All right, it's been boiling for probably about 10 minutes now, and I have it just a little bit above medium on my stove. As you can see, it's bubbling. It's a really nice golden color. You don't want it to bubble a lot more than this, but you definitely want it to be bubbling because right now we're just evaporating the moisture out. So just continue to let it cook like this. It's still way too runny to be close to temperature. So we'll just check back in about 10 more minutes and see how it's doing. Okay, so we have definitely been going for about 25 or 30 minutes, a little bit more even. As you can see, it's definitely thickening, and the bubbles are popping a little bit more. They're thick, it's a heavier pop. This is still not quite ready, but if you were using a candy thermometer, I would definitely add it at this point. You'll just set the candy thermometer in. I've never really found a candy thermometer that I liked, so I just do it the old-fashioned way. Like I said, you just have a cup of very cold water and a spoon, and I'll just demonstrate what I would do. I would just take a little bit of this mixture. As you can definitely see, it's much thicker. And I would dump it in there. And it's getting there. You'd pull it out. You can see it when it's cooled off. It's a little bit pasty. At this point, I would just continue to watch it and check it every few minutes until I feel like it's got the texture that I want. So we'll keep doing that, checking it every few minutes. All right, we're gonna check this again, give it a little stir. I think this one is pretty much ready to go. I can kind of tell, but we'll just check it anyway. So we allow it to go down in the water. Yeah, it's really close, maybe not quite. As you can see, if this was a candy bar, it would be about the consistency of a caramel that's been sitting in the sun for a few minutes. So we're definitely going to want to let it sit. But At this point, you'll watch it really close, checking it every maybe 20 or 30 seconds, because it only takes a few seconds for it to reach that threshold, and then you've got to really be careful to not let it go over. So just, like I said, check it every few seconds, 20 seconds. I even get new water so that my water's nice and cold. Give it a little stir. It's really, really close. Very close. Once again, you just dump that in. It starts to stream down in. You can definitely tell it's very close. That cold water gives you almost immediate results as to what this is going to be like when it cools. And yes, it's getting much closer now. Very close. I do like it to be stiff enough that it will hold its shape though, because you don't want it flattening out after you've cut it up into candy bars. That is really close. Maybe we'll check it one more time in about, at this point you're almost checking it every, maybe even every 10 seconds here. About the time that you finish checking it, it's ready to check again, just because it really does. It does go so quickly past that threshold of being ready. And you can see it's definitely changed in its mannerisms, the way that it's bubbling. It's not steaming near as much. One last check. All right, so I'm just getting this out. Got to be careful not to get water in there. Dipping water in there. Yeah, I'm gonna let it sit for just maybe about 20 seconds more. See, you can still see that it's soft. That's a soft. That would still be a very soft caramel. It could definitely work at this point, especially if you lined your pan with parchment paper to keep it from sticking. But you want to make sure that you do get it up to temperature. This is the trickiest part, because getting it over temperature is not as good, but you want it to be up to temperature or it won't be like a candy bar. So you can see this is what it does as you drop it down in there. It strings out. All right, this is firm in my fingers. The bubbling has really slowed. At this point, I think it's pretty much ready. So once you feel like it's ready, you're going to turn the heat off and immediately slide it off of the heat. You do not want to keep cooking it. Slide this up. And then we're going to add the peanuts, stir that in. This will cool off the caramel really quickly. That helps to cool the caramel off. You definitely want to cool it off fast. And let me reposition the camera so you guys can watch the rest of this. We're going to take this and we're going to dump it into the pan. This is extremely hot, obviously, so be super careful. Once you've got the majority of it out, it'll be a little bit easier to work with it because it won't be so heavy. So I use that to scrape it out, kind of flatten it in there. And then use the spatula to continue to get the caramel out, so try not to waste any. Usually it starts to cool and makes it even a little bit tricky to get that last bit of caramel out. But as you can see, it's a beautiful, deep, caramely color. It smells amazing with all those peanuts. And it will start to cool. And then, of course, we're going to hurry and put it into its bath of ice water as soon as we get it all scraped. Try not to waste. All right, and then you're just gonna set it down in there, and let it cool for an hour before you even try to cut it. It does take a while. And then we'll come back to it and I'll cut it up for you. You can see how beautiful it is, but that's basically it. You're done. So we'll come back to it when it's all the way cooled. Okay, we have been letting our candy bar cool for approximately an hour. And as you can see, mine just popped right out of the pan. If you have trouble getting it out, you can use a butter knife or something to scrape away the sides, but parchment paper is really good for this candy bar to not stick. Now, as you can see, so this is what it looks like. It's about an inch tall and probably about, I think my pan is a 3 by 12, 3 inches by 12 inches. So at this point, my favorite thing to do with it is to cut it up into sections so that I have several little candy bars. But you could just leave it the giant candy bar, of course. And as you can see, it's very stiff. You want to make sure you get all the parchment paper. Sometimes it folds a little bit and gets stuck in the candy. So I just make sure that I peel all of the parchment paper out so nobody's eating parchment paper. But it's usually pretty easy to get it out. And then just set it on a cutting board. And I just take about an inch section, and it is a little bit stiff, so you have to be kind of careful not to slip and cut yourself. Cut it into little sections. This one's pretty stiff. And there you go, that's what they look like. Just cute little payday candy bars. They taste amazing, so I hope you guys enjoyed this recipe, and there'll be more coming soon.